Welcome to AGORACOM CEO Interviews, a production of AGORACOM in which we speak with small cap executives about recent important news. With us today is Steve Ragosi. He's President and CEO of Garibaldi Resources, the trade on the TSX Venture Exchange under the stock symbol GGI. Now, for those of you who are new to the show, Garibaldi is focused on discovery and development of its assets in some of the most prolific mining regions in both Mexico and British Columbia. Now, more than just lip service, because we get a lot of that nowadays in the small caps, the company has about $1.7 million in working capital per their recent financials. No warrants, no major financing since 2009, and drilling is in progress with strong news flow from both Mexico and British Columbia. Joining us also to go over some of the technical aspects, our chief market commentator, Alan Barry Laboucan. Steve, welcome to the show.
Thanks, George. Thanks for having me.
Alan, good to have you along for some of the technical info.
You bet, George. I'm glad to be here. As you know, in our recent show, I talked about Garibaldi, and it's hard to find good silver stories out there, and down in Mexico they definitely have one, so I'm excited to talk to Steve.
All right, Steve. So you've had two pretty great press releases that came out in August while most of us were on vacation. One was on the 5th, in which you announced that you confirmed the discovery of a shallow, high-grade system. This is at your Silver Eagle target in Mexico. Then you followed that up on the 22nd of August, where you announced high-grade silver and increasing base metal values that were sampled up to 3 kilometers south of the South Eagle discovery. So a lot going on, some really big numbers. Put this into context for us as to what you've discovered.
Well, in Mexico, we're focusing on basically shallow, high-grade or above-average grade deposits that we can exploit, short-term and shorten up that cycle. We got 3 projects in different states. Rodadero is the one that we are actively drilling as we speak. We've drilled 7 holes. We're going to complete another 8 holes. We've hit a shallow, high-grade silver system with base metals, and we're expanding that to see the dimensions, and we're actually going to be testing the geometry of this thing, north, south, east. I mean, it's open in all directions. What we're finding right now at Silver Eagle is that we've got high silver values and some base metals, and as we go south to another little target area called Realis, about 1.5 kilometers away, we're still seeing the high silver values as far as the surface sampling is concerned. We're also seeing extremely high base metals percentage-wise. So the other aspect of the Rodadero project as a whole is that there's a multitude of targets here. Silver Eagle is one of a dozen targets. There's a clustering effect that's going on here in the northwest-southeast trend. And from Silver Eagle, you go across a silicified ridge 2 kilometers to the east, and you're into a mineral environment where you're seeing very high-grade gold. So it's a very intriguing package. We've been consulting with our geologists. We expect at some stage that we'll have Dr. Peter McGaugh do a site visit, and Peter is one of the top-notch CRD specialists in Mexico for sure, not the world, and he's one of the discoverers and founders of Mag Silver and the discovery of the Juanicipio deposit, which is their lead mine, or that they're focusing on, that they're putting in production.
Now, just to put some of your numbers in context for everyone at home, because you've mentioned high grades a couple of times, and maybe for me a little more layman, and Alan, you're going to be able to chime in a minute, but some of the numbers you talked about here.
George, they're really high grade.
Yeah, so I'm just going to read them off here. Hole SE 1403, 1,935 grams per ton of silver between 4 and 5 meters deep. That's about 62 ounces per ton. You also had, it looks like, 8,000. You also had 8,000 grams per ton of silver, in addition to high-grade gold of 52.6 grams per ton. So, are you being just a little modest by saying high grade as opposed to wow grade, or is it me just not understanding these numbers?
Well, you can use different terminology, bonanza, whatever. I mean, at the end of the day, we're looking for an above-average, near-surface, shallow deposit that we can exploit. The tonnage to this thing, I mean, is wide open. It could turn out to be much larger than we believe. It's certainly looking that the mineralized horizon is expanding as we head south at depth. So it's very, very intriguing as to what we have here, but it's exciting. Now, whether or not we end up with, we don't want to get into discussing tonnages and grades, but you know, anything that's in the north of 150 grams silver is a very nice looking deposit, depending on the economics and what kind of tonnage, what kind of scale you've got.
Well,
so,
to put it into context, Steve, to talk about tonnage right now would be, you guys haven't drilled it off. You have
it's premature.
No idea where the feeders are. You know, it's still wide open. So I mean, you could just be at the top of a system there that you have to do a lot more with. But what excites me is that, you know, those bonanza grades in the early stages of drilling, it's not like you were able to target high grade. It's part of the system.
Yeah, I mean, we'd sampled these kind of numbers at surface, but to find it in a drill core was a bit of a surprise, to say the least. And you're right. I mean, Peter believes we're high in the system, like it hasn't eroded. So we haven't yet, at this stage, drilled to depth. That'll come in the next stage after what we're completing right now. Right now, we're trying to get the geometry and define where this thing is headed. But it's certainly, I think it's got long legs, this thing, particularly with the results that we're getting at surface, again, 1.5 kilometers to the south. It's an intriguing target, Realis, which is, again, south of Silver Eagle. But, you know, there's structurally there, the question would be, are they all one and the same as far as the surface expression of a much larger deposit down? I mean, the key here is to find the feeder zones. What's feeding these high grades?
Right, and when you've got such widespread hits like that, you know, there's a pretty good chance that it's definitely got the potential of getting much larger.
Well, the good news is that where we're finding these high grades, particularly to the east, where you have really elevated gold numbers. What's intriguing is the veins there. There's swarms of them. So they're the kind of deposit where, you know, if you find 2 or 3 significant veins close enough together, you can work up some tons and look at exploiting that very, very quickly.
Yeah, but you've also got the situation like Extore did down in Argentina, where, you know, they saw all these surface expressions of these veins, narrow veins, and they kept on following them. Finally, they found one that snuck under cover, and that was the home run that you know, eventually got them bought out. So you're still so early in this system, but with the grade and the size potential, it's quite exciting to me.
Well, the number of targets, too, is really something that is unique. We haven't been into, we've looked at a number of projects, we've worked on a number of projects in Mexico, but there's an awful lot going on here in a 5 kilometer square package.
Steve, let me ask you, because Alan did say here at the early stages, your first drill results came out back on May 14th, and those were bonanza grade back then, and now you got this these follow-on results on August 5th, August 22nd. So is Mexico moving along faster than even you expected out of this project?
Well, we own our own drill, so the fact that Silver Eagle was a target amongst a dozen or more targets at Rodadero, we're going through basically a process of elimination. And obviously, once we hit these grades, we couldn't eliminate it. But that opened up a whole new, okay, we gotta drill this thing and see how big it is. So that's an ongoing process. Our geologists thought enough of the targets that we agreed that we would continue through the rainy season. A lot of companies will actually shut down just because it's more cost effective to drill when the rain, until, you know, stop during the rainy season and start up again when the rainy season ends, because it is problematic. But we felt it was important to just keep our feet moving forward, and we should have some good news flow upcoming.
How much work do you think it's going to take until you can start to get a handle of how big this may be, or the connectivity between a couple of the areas?
Well, I think since we're drilling through the rainy season, and then we're heading into a period where you've got the fall, the winter down there is it's perfect. The weather is the coolest. It's just perfect weather to drill in all through December, January. I mean, it's kind of a contrast to what we're doing here in British Columbia. So we can be active down there all year round, obviously. And there's a lot more. I mean, other than the Rotadero targets which in themselves are challenging because there's so many of them. We also have we're making plans for the second round of drilling at La Patia, which is down at Sinaloa State. We're surrounded. We're an inlier claim. We're surrounded by Marlin Gold's La Trinidad mine is to the south. They poured their first gold bar back in January, February earlier this year. So they're about 15 kilometers within trucking distance. So there's, there was some dynamics there that we looked at when we did the deal to acquire that. There again, we're looking at a shallow heap leach scenario. The Marlin Gold, their La Trinidad deposit is averaging about 1.5 grams. We're looking at something similar to that, though we've hit as much as 82 grams in drill core, which is over a meter. That was intriguing. So we have high hopes for La Patia. And then obviously we have another project up in Chihuahua State, the Iris claim. We have 2 road accessible drill ready targets there. That's beside the Ocampo mine, which was bought out by Minera Frisco last year for $750 million. So
I think it's important to stress also, Steve, how you guys went about picking those particular projects, because that is coming into play now as you're making discoveries on those projects. So maybe you could go into that.
Well, we went into Mexico with a game plan of acquiring as much ground as we could around, in and around and near known ore bodies, deposits, mines. So we acquired 350,000 hectares, and we flew with the help of McDonald Detweiler here in Richmond. We contacted High Vista in Australia, and they flew. I think it's the first survey done by a junior in Mexico, a hyperspectral survey, which is basically a unit that is flown at about 17,000 feet, and it basically just collects the reflection off the surface. We wait until the hottest time of the year when all the vegetation dies in Mexico, so it's ideal for that desert environment. And then you get a reflection, and every mineral out there has a specific, it's almost like a supermarket barcode. It has a reflectance wavelength. So we could look at the mines that were, or deposits that turned into mines. We could look at the mineralogy of the surface reflectance of the hyperspectral wavelengths, and then we would look for similar targets on our ground. So it's basically a very straightforward comparative analysis, and we've done very, very well with it. We're successful, and it's the reason why we haven't had to finance for 5.5 years, is that we sold the project, the Tamoras project, to Paramount Gold and Silver, and their largest, the amount of ounces, their highest grade section of their property is the Don Essie vein, which we knew was there. We knew that we'd have to drill it to 700, 800 meters, but our geologists predicted that the vein would be there, and it was. So this technology is very, very interesting, and it's really part of the curriculum of every major mining company now. I mean, they all do hyperspectral surveys. We were just the first junior to do it on that scale down in Mexico, but it's been very, very successful, and it's benefited. It's paid dividends for our shareholders, to put it that way.
Yeah, well, not only in the sale of the asset, but now you're following it up and drilling some of your own targets, and it's proving to be a good target generator that hits with quality results.
Well, we actually even recouped half the cost of the survey by selling the proprietary data back to Nico Eagle and Coeur d'Alene and Paramount, and all these guys bought our data off of us. So that worked out really, really well. We're always looking for ways to work cost effectively, and it's been very, very successful for us.
Alan, just want to ask your take on the fact that there's high-grade silver, then a little further is gold, and then in there we've also got base metals. Does that concern you at all, or is that a very good thing to see that kind of metal mix?
No, I'm really excited about it because those are associated with each other, and they've got a lot to understand there, but finding high quality new silver stories out there is very, very difficult for me. I mean, remember we did a show recently, George, and I was trying to find some silver stories to talk about, and there's just not a lot of them. So I'm bullish on silver, I'm bullish on gold, and I'm really bullish on what they've found so far. Now, having said that, I want to qualify things. You didn't mention earlier that Garibaldi has a banner on my website, so I wanted everybody to know that there's some association there. But at the end of the day...
Let's assume you're horribly conflicted at the end of the day.
You wouldn't know it by the questions this guy asks.
Yeah, well, we're not going to softball him, but you're answering them quite well. That's for sure. Steve, let me ask you a question. We talked about a little bit about this off air. So a lot of what you're finding here is at shallow depths, which is great. Are you seeing a shift in appetite from the financing side, where just a few years ago everyone was looking for elephants, the big monsters, which also meant huge capital expenditure requirements, financing in the hundreds of millions of dollars? That doesn't seem like it's readily available today, even for the people who have it. What's the appetite out there like for these kind of projects, assuming it can become economical one day? So we're not making any assumptions now, but is there an appetite for smaller projects, smaller bites, getting to cash flow?
Yeah, well, first of all, these larger deposits are more and more difficult to find, period. So the larger, the majors pretty much need to take over companies they used to have a threshold of 1 million ounces. Now they're looking at smaller numbers, just because they have to maintain their reserves. Otherwise, they lose. Their stock price suffers, obviously. But there is money for smaller projects that accelerate things and get into a cash flow scenario in a shorter time frame. I mean, again, using the La Trinidad deposit, which Marlin Gold put into production, they came in under budget at something like $23 million. So that's the kind of the money's there. Obviously, in a zero rate environment, there's still some risk money out there. So there's an awful lot of some people out there that there's some funds that specialize in looking for these kind of scenarios.
George, and I'm also seeing I think more to your question there. I'm seeing a definite trend that, and it excites me a lot, because what you're seeing is the quality projects are the ones that are getting financed, especially if they're in mining-friendly jurisdictions. That's exactly what Garibaldi has down in Mexico: high-grade discovery, precious metals, near surface, potential for not huge capex. That's got all, when you're ticking off the box of what makes quality, that has all those quality elements. And what excites me about the industry is that we're seeing a trend where the quality is the ones that are getting financed. And I think that's what Garibaldi has at both the projects in Mexico and up in British Columbia.
Steve, we're going to wrap it up here, but I'm going to leave the last word to you, and then make sure I tell everyone at home that looks like with the activity you're going to have and the continued drilling through rainy season, that we expect to have you on again the next 60 days. What's next for Garibaldi?
Well, like I said, we're making plans for the second round at La Patia. We're accelerating our exploration plans up here in British Columbia. I think at the Chesley Valley up in northwest British Columbia, our Grizzly project. I think we're in a new copper mining camp. I think the discovery that Prosper Gold has made up there is legitimate. You wouldn't know it by their market price, but you know, we've been through the summer, and we've had a little bit of a downdraft here, and the precious metals have, you know, I think everyone was expecting a big boom in September, and there's some disappointment and some concern out there, but I think this is short-term lived. I think we're very much nearer a bottom than any kind of a top, and I think you know, I think we're looking at better days ahead. So we just keep our feet moving forward. We want to add value for our shareholders. We want to leverage this as much as possible. Leverage isn't just a word; it's just the way we operate. It's the way we think, and so we've been very successful for our shareholders to date, and we're going to continue to do that.
And we had so much to talk about regarding Mexico today because of what's such important news that we're going to have you on again to talk about exactly what you're doing in the Chesley Valley there in British Columbia. But thanks for that brief update.
Okay, appreciate it.
You've been watching Steve Vergosi. He's President and CEO of Garibaldi Resources. Trades on the TSX Venture Exchange under the stock symbol GGI. You can also find him on the web at GaribaldiResources.com, or to watch previous interviews and other great collateral information, get to AGORACOM and punch in Garibaldi Resources. Thanks to Steve for joining us. Alan, thank you for joining us as always.
You're welcome, George.